So this morning I released a video, had the most views I've ever had. It's 25,000 views an hour. And take a wild guess what the topic is. Coronavirus. Yeah, it's a very hot topic right now. You know, about, I would say, 15 years ago, I was doing talks around the governmental agencies in Washington, D.C., and also ExxonMobil. And they kicked me out. They actually said, you can't talk anymore. I called them up and said, why? They said, well, because you're recommending 45 eggs a day, and that's very bad for the heart. I said, no, I didn't say 45, I said 4 to 5. So they said, oh, okay, you can come back. So sometimes you have to clarify things. So disclosures, no financial ties to pharmaceutical, diagnostic, or medical devices, or food industry. Owner of drberg.com, Dr. Berg Supplements. Authored the Healthy Keto Plan. I organized a summit called the Healthy Keto Summit every year. And my bias is low carb. So today I want to talk about some unique problems that happen in the keto world. I have a large following on social media. I have a Facebook closed private group of 300,000 people, and it's called my Keto Lab. I'm able to test different things to see what works, see what problems that people are running into, and gain a tremendous amount of understanding about what people are running into and what the solutions are. So I want to share today some common problems and solutions, one of the biggest ones being plateau. It's keto stall. So I want to talk about that first. So a couple things. One is that you have people who say, well, it's not working. I only lost 2 pounds. The first week I lost 6, and now I just lost 2 pounds. I'm like, well, you have to understand that is normal. So it takes a little bit of education at first to set people up. But there's different levels of awareness that you have to understand. You have awareness of the problem, awareness of the cause of the problem, awareness of the solution, and also of the correct solution. So, like I would take, like men, for example, they might have this huge belly, but they're not very aware that that is a fatty liver. They're just like, oh yeah, it's fine, I can deal with it. So I wouldn't necessarily go right into teaching them about what to eat, because that's too high level. So I really address people where they're at, and then build them up. And one of the things I found is that you have to teach them the basics of certain things. Especially like one guy came in, he goes, yeah, your program's not working. I tried it for 2 weeks and it didn't work. Well, it did work, but then it stopped working. Well, what did you do? Well, I stopped the diet. I said, did you think it was going to keep working if you stopped? So you really have to educate people from the very beginning. And so there's a really important, very vital principle that I talk about. And that is about, it's not lose weight to get healthy, it's get healthy to lose the weight. And this is so basic because looking at diabetes as a disease doesn't work as this is like this cause situation. It's the effect, of course, of high insulin. If someone does not understand this concept, they're very susceptible to doing the wrong solution. Very unhealthy programs. Diet, appetite suppressants, low quality products. They try to actually diet to lose weight. How many of you agree that dieting actually destroys your metabolism? You take someone who's menopause and you ask them how many diets have you been on? It's probably been 10 or 12, and every time they do it, of course they're doing it wrong. It slows down the metabolism. So just because someone's losing weight doesn't mean they're getting healthy. It really depends on how they're losing weight. So there's some products that people think are healthy. You have, of course, the Slim Fast, hidden sugars. If you take a look at the ingredients, high levels of soy protein isolates, which are exposed to hexane, which in PubMed is a neurotoxin. And FDA has no ceiling of how much hexane is in there. Had a lot of clients come in that have done programs like Ideal Protein, that really high in soy protein isolates, and end up with liver and gallbladder issues. So and they're hidden sugars as well. So it's a really important question that I always ask people to figure things out, and I think it's just, it's not emphasized. And that is, okay, when did this problem start? And what happened just before that? And you can get so much data. I had one lady came in with a heart attack symptoms. She's been to the hospital, spent $40,000 worth of testing, and nothing showed up. And then we find out, I says, well, when did it start? Well, 2 weeks ago. What day? Tuesday. What did you eat? She goes, oh, a big banana split. I said, okay. Laid it on my table, started doing some work on her. And it was basically just a congested gallbladder, backed up in the liver, causing heart pain. All the heart symptoms went away. So it's really, really important to find out what occurred just before you starting having that problem. I ask that question a lot. Maltodextrin, glycemic index way higher than glucose and sugar. So obesity is a symptom. It's not, if you focus on obesity, you're not going to be as successful. It's coming from too much insulin. So I have people focus on other indicators of health. I try to get them off the weight loss at first because they may not lose weight initially, especially if they have a slow metabolism. So I always ask them, how is your energy? Is your hunger going away? That's a good indication that the insulin is coming back in a good range. Carb cravings. If you still have carb cravings, there's a problem with your blood sugars. Is your belly shrinking? There are women that are actually menopausal that have a lot of atrophy. And it looks just like fat, identical. Because what happens after menopause is sometimes you have a spike in cortisol. Cortisol tends to turn muscle protein into glucose, and then it raises insulin. So you have this loss of muscle, looks like cellulite and fat, and they really adamantly want to lose weight, but this takes some time to heal this process. So in the process, they're building up their proteins. You know, it takes months and months, maybe even a year or two, to build up this protein back there where they're per volume, the muscle is heavier than the fat. So everything is shrinking. They're not losing weight. You just have to teach them that this is normal. They have to know that, so they're not setting themselves up for a loss. So the most important thing that a person could do to increase their health is to use their own fat as fuel. So there's several advantages of doing this. Number one, now you start running on ketones, and there's a lot of advantage. It's a superior fuel. More energy output, appetite suppressant, more efficient, better lipid profiles. Tumors can't consume ketones. Reduce oxidative stress, and more O2, less CO2. And then you have the benefits of reduction of insulin, which is the common denominator of so many health problems. I mean, inflammatory conditions, heart, of course diabetes, the fatty liver, high cholesterol, aneurysms, stroke, dementia. Other than that, it doesn't have any effects. But it's actually pretty connected to everything. So you get to do these two things. You know about the glycemic index, there's actually an insulin index too. How many of you are not familiar with the insulin index? Okay. That's a scale that it's all the non-carbohydrate triggers or the non-carbohydrate influences on insulin. And of course, fat is the lowest effect on insulin, but lean, low-fat protein, like whey protein, is very high on the scale of the insulin index. And this is why the keto works really good, because you have higher fat. If you have a whole egg, for example, versus the egg whites, you have a much less insulin spike. And this is important, just understanding what we're trying to do. We're trying to create as much health benefit by the reduction of insulin. And so you have the lowering of carb. We don't want to be afraid of fat. And we need to understand that scale, but we also want to look at other ways of decreasing insulin. And one of the biggest ways is fasting, intermittent fasting. Fasting is not low carb, it's no carb. And what happens, there's a little hormone called the GIP hormone in the small intestine that gets activated every time you eat, no matter what you eat. So if you don't understand that, you may not put emphasis on fasting and realized that that's really important, especially in the helping people with really resistant weight problems. And that's very beneficial. So the combination of both of these are vitally important. Insulin is a dominating hormone. In the presence of too much insulin, a lot of the other hormones are suppressed, especially growth hormone, insulin-like growth factor. And then you get, when you consult people, you get this thing where you find out they're on sort of keto. How many of you ever had clients that are on sort of keto? Yeah. I'm not losing weight. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm on sort of keto. Well, keto is like, you can't be on sort of keto. I mean, it just doesn't work. It's like a switch. There's going to be a point where you're not going to get into ketosis. There's a certain amount of carbohydrates that you need to go below. And if your metabolism is low, it has to be even lower. So I know this might be hard to believe, but some of your patients or clients do cheat occasionally. And they don't tell you that they cheat. They keep it a little secret. How many of you have ever had that happen? Once. Once before? So what happens is they keep it a little secret, and they do it again, and do it again. You're coaching them, and you go, they're not getting results. What's interesting about this is they tend to be a bit critical to kind of justify it. And so I have learned in practice, I have an advantage of being in practice for 29 years. I work with so many people that I see this common scenario that happens. If a client comes in that's not progressing and they're critical, like they'll say, well, you know, I really don't like the color of your walls, and your secretary is just so rude, and I'm not losing weight. And I go, thank you very much. I have a question. Is there anything that you're eating that you shouldn't be eating? I look them right in the eye and they'll do this. Like, no. They look down. You know right there they're not telling the truth. So I don't make them feel guilty. I say, well, what do you think about when I ask you that question? They go, well, I did have a little ice cream, but it was organic, you know. I said, okay, good. Anything else? Potato chips. But I didn't have that many. I go, okay, how many do you have? Well, I did have a bag, okay. And I just keep going. Anything else? And you will be shocked to find out these guys are consuming massive amounts of junk food on the side. Found out this one lady, she was doing literally, I think, a whole bag of Oreo cookies every single day. So it's very important, if you're coaching someone, to know that. Because if you don't know that, you're going to be trying something else, and they're going to eventually leave, and you're going to be chopped liver. So I spend a lot of time just keeping that communication line open so there's no secrets. I don't care if they cheat. Just tell me. I want that communication line open. So for those people that have a very slow metabolism, and I know you have some clients that no matter what you do, they just can't. Nothing works. Okay, let's put you on a 500-calorie diet. Still doesn't work. Have you exercised more? Oh, it doesn't work. Strict keto, it doesn't work. You ever have a client like that? Yeah. They're usually menopausal. They usually have the thyroid removed, the gallbladder removed, they're pre-diabetic, and they have a history of many different diets. And now they end up in your office, and you're like, okay, what do I got to do with this? So what I will do is I'll do all the things I told you, then I'll start to go down the list and start to really beef up, no pun intended, the intermittent fasting. So I will decrease the frequency of eating, and I'll have them fast longer. There's a really important rule that I tell my clients, and also even on the videos right now, is that don't eat if you're not hungry. Do not eat if you're not hungry, because then you're going to be hungry when you eat, because it stimulates insulin. So then the blood sugar comes down. So it's so simple. And so these individuals, what happens is they're going a long period of time, and I told them they have 2 meals a day. I said, are you hungry? No. I just eat them because you told me. I said, okay, let's go to 1 meal a day. All right. And I'll do that. Are they progressing? Sometimes they're not. They're not really seeing the changes that they really need, and they have maybe a huge belly. And you just have to come up with something that's a little more powerful. So I'll do this, kind of a stair-step method. The first thing is I'll take their breakfast, and I'll say, hey, listen, if you're in the morning, if you're not hungry, just don't skip it and start pushing it forward to lunch. And so pretty much the breakfast is gone. And so they have lunch and dinner. And then what I'll do is I'll take the lunch and the dinner and I'll start squeezing them together. And to the point where it's like a 4-hour window. Most people do very, very well with this. And I do have quite a few people doing this on my lab with tremendous amounts of success. Some people need to do 1 meal a day. The key is making sure they have enough nutrients in that meal, to prevent things like hair loss, which I will cover. Now, some people need to go even a little bit longer. Not everyone, but I have put people that fast to the point where they're eating once every other day. Now, as long as their energy is good, they're taking the nutrients, and you'll see that they'll finally start to change. And I have had a handful of people who were consuming 1 meal every other day, make sure they do the sea salts and electrolytes, and they finally, after all this time, start losing weight. So their metabolism is so efficient that this is what they need. And it's not that they're starving when they're not eating, they're basically eating their own fat when they're not eating. And that's the concept that you have to get across, is that you are eating when you're not eating, you're just eating your fat. So, sleeping. Interesting. Had a lady who, she lifted 3.5 million pounds at the gym over the course of a year and lost 1 single pound. And she came in very depressed, and I found out she was not sleeping. She was actually on the right, she was eating pretty good, but she wasn't sleeping. So I actually worked with her with sleeping. I actually told her to stop watching the news right before bed. That was the big problem. I told her to start taking calcium magnesium. I did some work on her, and she started sleeping like a baby, and that was the only time that things started to kick in. She lost a lot of weight, great before and after. I mean, don't underrate sleep. Like, my wife and I went on a trip recently because we were like completely pale and white in January, so we went to the Bahamas, to this little remote little island where they have like no internet, no reception, and it got dark around 6:30. There was nothing to do, so we went to bed at 7 o'clock. And I said, well, let's just go to bed. We go to bed. We think we slept for 13 or 14 hours. I've never felt that better in my life. It was amazing. So, I mean, I've been running on maybe 6 hours, if that. Just getting more sleep can create huge changes in your blood sugars in your body. So I need to do more of that. Okay, stress. Yes, that can affect you. I think out of all the stress people have, a lot of the stress comes from other people. How many realize that people can stress people out? Certain personality types. You got the slow drivers that just really jack up my adrenals. They're just driving. And then you have the antagonistic people. But really the worst case is the passive aggressive. The underminers. They're the person they told you they stood up for you, but they actually ruin your reputation. They'll say comments like, well, you've done quite well for your educational level. Like, what? Had this attorney come in to see me. He said, I said, hey, how did you find out about me? He says, well, out of all the quacks, you seem to be the less weird. It was kind of a hint of a compliment, but it was really kind of just taking my wind out. So as a practitioner, you're always going to get a percentage of those people that come in that are just, you don't feel good when you're around them. I screen those out right now. I screen those guys out. And they constantly are nullifying your results. If they get results, it'll be someone else that worked on them, wasn't you. Oh, they'll say comments like, hey, that's a nice sweater. Was that on sale? Like, oh, you got a haircut. Was that at Cheap Cuts? I'm like, so it's just something about them you don't really like. But I do have I finally figured out a way of getting back at these people. Revenge. You want to know how I do it? You can do, but how many of you have clients like this? Yeah, this is what you do. It's a great thing. When they start doing that, all you do is you just look them right on the face, look them really close, and just say, what? What's that? Has that been growing? Has that been growing? You should probably get that checked out. Yeah, get your liver checked out. Because that's what they're doing to you. They're introverting you. You just flip it. They'll be in the bathroom for hours looking at that little speck there and like, oh my gosh, is that the coronavirus? And then just get them out of your space. And But with this attorney that came in, what I did is I said, I knew I did not want to take him on. So I said, I'll tell you what, this is what I want to do. Go up to the front, and I have a bottle of calcium. It's $4. I want you to buy that. Go ahead and try that. If it doesn't work, I can't help you. Never saw him again. So, nice way of getting rid of those guys. But stress is a really, really key thing to, oh my gosh. Exercise, either over-exercising, over-training, or not exercising at all. So regular, consistent exercise creates some really nice effects with a lot of things. Autophagy, the cleaning up of old damaged tissue, protects your immune system, keeps your body full of oxygen. But I had one lady who came in. She was exercising, I'm not kidding, 6 hours a day and no weight loss. 6 hours a day at the gym. So she was overtraining. So I had her, which took a long time to do this, but I got her to exercise like for an hour twice a week. And she started to lose the weight. And it was really a weird brain strain because she didn't realize that the benefit of exercise occurs when you're sleeping 48 hours later, not during the exercise. Exercise is a stress. The benefits are delayed. She didn't understand that. Okay, bloating. So I do recommend vegetables for most people, but if they start bloating, I take them off of it because they might have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They might not deal with them. And so there's been a handful of people, not the majority, that just can't do well on vegetables. So I will adjust what I do. But I'll tell you why I recommend more vegetables in a bit. But if they're bloating, that can cut down on the weight loss because they're fluid retained. They're just holding the stress in the gut, and that's happened a handful of times. So you want to, just kind of look at that as well. Okay. Next thing is the transitional phase when you're getting into ketosis. There's this thing called keto fatigue. Has anyone ever experienced that? So I had a chance to just work with a lot of people and find out this is mostly potassium deficiency. And when you do keto, you're no longer running on carbs. So you're going to dump a lot of fluid because carbs retain fluid. And with that fluid becomes electrolytes, not just potassium, but sodium. Now, our bodies tend to retain sodium more than potassium. We don't have any mechanism to retain potassium hardly at all. So there's this false information being spread out there that potassium is dangerous on our body. Of course, if you have stage kidney disease, yes. But if you have healthy kidneys, it's not dangerous. In fact, potassium is protective of the kidney. If you want data on that, I have amazing research on that. You can ask me later. But the thing about potassium is out of all the nutrients, we need potassium in large amounts, 4,700 milligrams a day. If you take a look at what you have to eat to consume that, you're going to find out the majority of people are just not consuming enough potassium. So potassium is involved with a lot of things, fluid exchange, energy, it buffers uric acid. It's really an effective thing for blood pressure. Wow, it just brings blood pressure down. There's a lot of data on this. Also, heart rhythm really helps with arrhythmias because it's involved in the pacemaker. Nerve and energy, muscle, making HCl. But the main purpose of potassium is involved in the sodium-potassium pump in the cells. So you have these little pumps on the cell surface that you have 1 billion of them. Let me just go right to that first. Yeah, this is what they look like. They have one purpose, to keep the potassium inside the cell and the sodium outside the cell. To keep this electrical gradient, to keep these two minerals separate. That forms through the help of the insulated wall of that cell. It helps to develop a battery. The body allocates 30% of all of its energy to these pumps. And what this electrical energy does is it activates the nerve and the muscle tissue. So if you're deficient and this pump doesn't have enough raw material, you're going to get weakness and in the muscle and things like that. And so this is on Wikipedia, so you know it's true. They said it's the causes of hypokalemia, low potassium, is one of the causes is going on a ketogenic diet. I don't know if I believe that, but I do know that you'd lose fluid with this, and so that could be the reason why. Also, one of the big symptoms of hypokalemia, the first one is feeling tired. So if you're into exercise and you're doing endurance exercise, if you take a little more potassium, you're going to find you can go a lot longer too, because your cellular pumps are recharged. So to prevent that, I recommend foods that are high in potassium on the ketogenic diet. I don't want to get too much into this, but the potassium and the insulated phospholipid layer on the cell acts as a capacitor, which basically stores electrical charge. Your cells are batteries. And if you divide the amount of voltage, which is 150 microvolts inside the cell, by the thickness of the wall, which is very small, it can yield electrical fields in excess of 200 kilovolts. That's 200,000 volts. So certainly enough to break down any most insulators. So if you compare that to anything like underground cables, it smokes anything else. So your cells are just amazing how it can generate this incredible amount of voltage and activate muscles, and if you make sure that you give it the right nutrients. Beet tops have the most potassium. Per cup, 1,300. So, I mean, I don't consume beet tops, so it's spinach. The problem with spinach that I have on the keto is it's high in oxalates. If you're prone to kidney stones, I have them avoid spinach. Brussels sprouts, 600 something, cabbage, 300, tomatoes, 400, Swiss chard. So you can see avocados, 830 milligrams, asparagus, 400. So typically speaking, you're going to get a little more potassium with greens. But you can also get them from lamb. You can get potassium from lamb, 268 for 3 ounces. Canned tuna is 280. Brown steak, 3 ounces at 300. So you really just have to, you should probably yourself or with a client just start calculating how much potassium is a person really eating, and you may find that it's not even close. And so you may want to substitute with calcium citrate or another type of calcium. I'm sorry, potassium. Okay, keto flu is purely a salt deficiency, sodium or chloride. No one's really talking about chloride. Salt is composed of 40% sodium and 60% chlorides. Chlorides are really necessary to make the hydrochloric acid. So it's a very important mineral, just as sodium. So when you do keto, you do need more sea salt, and so that will take care of the flu-like symptoms very quickly, and also weak muscles. Here's another gem. If you don't know this, this is a no-brainer. You're going to have clients come to you that have peripheral neuropathy, and it's a really good remedy that seems to work the majority of the time. Because hyperglycemia depletes vitamin B1. And B1 is involved in making myelin sheath. It protects the cells against the complications of high sugar. It's considered a nerve vitamin. When you're low in B1, you get neuritis. You get that excessive thinking, and like nervous anxiety. I like the best source of B1 being nutritional yeast. It's more of a natural type. It rids lactic acid. So if you put someone on metformin, one of the side effects, it's rare, is lactic acidosis. B1 reduces that complication. So if you have someone on metformin, if you have them on B12 and B1, that would be very smart. It's involved in 4 different steps in the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria and the generation of ATP. So it's like the spark plug that occurs when you have fuel and oxygen coming into that Krebs cycle. And so if you've been on a high-carb diet, you'll deplete B1, And that's when you start getting the complications of diabetes. And mainly it's the destruction of the vascular, the capillary function, the blood flow to the nerve, in the eye, and the nerve, also in the epithelial cells in the heart and the kidney, as well as in the peripheral nerves, not to mention the brain. So benfotiamine, if you've never heard of this, it's a fat-soluble B1. It's a no-brainer. It's quite miraculous, and they made it fat-soluble to penetrate the myelin sheath in the brain. And it can be absorbed, I think it's 7 to 9 times more than water-soluble B1. But it's a really, you just get a bottle of it and have them take, 4 times a day, whatever the recommended dosage is. And it seems to work for peripheral neuropathies. I will say that some people, if it's really bad, it does take months to kick in. Alpha lipoic acid also is good as well. But it reduces the oxidative stress and the complications of diabetes. I have a lot of references if you want it. Hair loss. Okay. So you have sometimes people say, well, keto is very unhealthy because you're going to lose all your hair. Well, that's probably if you're doing it incorrectly. The main thing with the hair loss is you need certain trace minerals, not just for the thyroid, but for the hair directly. So the two trace minerals that seem to work the majority of the time are zinc and selenium. And they both are actually involved in the thyroid. There's biotin is another really good one as well. If someone has gut issues, it could be the reason why your body makes biotin. So it could be either that you don't have the friendly bacteria to make biotin, or you have gut damage that you're not able to absorb that biotin. So sometimes I'll give people biotin in higher amounts to kick in the hair. But zinc is a really important thing. So what I do is I make sure that they do what's called a healthy version of keto, which is high-density nutrient foods, especially the trace minerals, and that would be the shellfish. These are high zinc foods, tuna, eggs, pumpkin seeds, lamb, fish, as well as selenium is another important one. Selenium is probably one of the most important trace mineral antioxidants, really important in the thyroid, especially Hashimoto's, because you have all this inflammatory reactions and to counter all that free radical damage that's happening with hydrogen peroxide. And so selenium is really important. And where do you get it? You get it actually in fish and seafood. So this is just a chart to show you the mercury. Some people are concerned about mercury. As long as you have enough selenium, it'll counter the mercury. So the 3 types of fish that you wouldn't want to consume would be pilot whale, which I know I really love that, mako shark, or swordfish. But everything else is pretty good, so you don't necessarily have to worry about that. Selenium, tuna, Brazil nuts, eggs, sardines, halibut, sunflower seeds, spinach, and beef. Shellfish, you can see that different nutrients contain a lot of different trace minerals. So a well-rounded meal would be fine. Shellfish, I think, is great for keto, as long as it's healthy version. Key additional, because I'm trying to go fast because I can see the time's running out here. Key foods, I do recommend a small amount of dairy for certain people, but if they start getting acne, if they have problems with fibroids, if they have a prostate problem, I'm going to take them off dairy. But because I'm from Wisconsin, I like high quality dairy, and of course I do the grass-fed organic. At Halloween, we gave out these little mini packs, and these kids just don't come back anymore. I don't know why. I want to thank you for coming and listening, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much.